on a passage of your choosing. I chose 1 Kings 18, verses 30 to 40. Now, if for some reason you think to yourself after this sermon, boy, I sure would like to read that 22-page paper, I will be more than glad to send it to you. Just know the grade I got on the paper was not the best. The grade I got on the sermon was a lot better. We will leave it at that. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with this sermon. I remember back in my academy days at Monterey Bay Academy, we used to do things called music tours, weekend music tours, and they would take us to Visalia or Sonora, and it'd be a 2-day weekend trip. But one day, someone decided we should have a 4-day weekend trip to one of my least favorite places on earth, known as Southern California. As much as I like being stuck in traffic for the duration of a day, I don't. So we went down south, and of course it was raining, and they said we were going to go to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. I'd never heard of this place. But I'm a big fan of museums and antique stores. I don't really know why. I can spend all day in antique shops just looking around at things, usually not buying because antique shops tend to be overpriced. But so they have a lot of great presidential memorabilia. They have pieces of the Berlin Wall, a whole section of it, a full replica of Air Force One during Reagan's time. But the last thing you encounter as you're walking through the library, there's a last room, and right past it is the gift shop. And in this last room, there is one object and one object only. It is an I-beam. For those of you who are not familiar with what an I-beam is, they're used in the construction of skyscrapers. They're those giant pieces of metal that look like an eye, essentially. And when you first look at it, all you can think is, well, why would they put an I-beam in a presidential library? But as you come closer, there's a plaque with an inscription of it. And the plaque reads something along the lines of, this I-beam came from Tower 1, from the World Trade Center. And in that moment, I realized it never truly hit me. The events of September 11th had never truly hit me. You see, I was in first grade at the time. That lets you know how old I was. But it didn't, my teacher told me the next day, did you guys see the news? Oh, I was crying when the towers fell, and I was like, why are we crying about towers falling? It didn't make sense to me. And even through the years, hearing about it in the news every year, we hear about it. But it never really hit me that it actually happened. It was just something that we hear about every year. We stop, we say a prayer, we have a special Vesper service at MBA for it. But when I saw the I-beam, it made me stop, and it made everything reality to me. It made me realize that someone had actually driven planes into buildings and that they had actually fallen. It made me truly realize that about 3,000 American lives had been lost that day alone, as well as the American lives that were lost in the coming years from the war that took place because of these events and some others. But in the same way that this I-beam woke me up to the events of September 11th, the Israelites didn't really get the idea of that God was with them. It took a giant sign for them to realize that God had never truly left them. Turn with me to 1 Kings 18, and we're going to be focusing here on verses 30 to 40. And we're going to read a few verses before that. Now, the book of 1 Kings there's nothing truly spectacular about it, unlike, Daniel and Revelation. They're these great big books that we spend hours upon hours studying one word out of it. The book of 1 Kings is simply a history of what had happened to the Israelites in that time. The authorship is unknown to this day. Some historians suggest it was written at about 1500 BC, others say before that, some say after that. But nonetheless, 1 Kings 18 outlines what happened when the Israelites had once again turned from God. You see, as often happened, the Israelites had forgotten that God was with them, despite the fact they had all these signs and all these people come before that, letting them know that God is with you, clear as day. They had Moses, they had Abraham, and all these great figures. But once again, they had fallen away from God, and they were captured. And once they were captured, they decided to worship the gods of the people who overtook them. And so we get to verses 20 and 21, mostly verse 21. And Elijah gathers all the prophets on the mount, and he says this. Elijah came near all the people and said, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, follow him. But the people did not answer him a single word. So this brings up the first point that I would like to outline today, which is that we need to choose for ourselves what we believe. Growing up, I was born on the Sabbath, which guaranteed me to be an Adventist, despite being born in a Dominican hospital, a Catholic hospital. But, it makes sense if you don't think about it. But nonetheless, I was born on the Sabbath, and I was raised an Adventist by my two parents who are here today. And Sabbath was never really personal to me as a kid growing up, you know? I knew that Friday night when the sun went down, we turned the TV off. And that means we don't watch any Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles on Saturday. And Saturday morning, I have to comb my hair backwards, put some gel in it, you know, put on my nice clip-on tie and my nice pants. And then we go to Sabbath school. I carry my Bible in my hand, and I have to act extra special good on Sabbath because it is a special day. I didn't know why, but I knew that's what it was. And so this is how I grew up, you know. Every Sabbath, put on my special pants, my special hair gel. My hair gel was only for Sabbath. No other day I would wear hair gel except for Sabbath. And I would put on my special hair gel, you know, I'd comb it back just like my dad, and we go to church. And it wasn't until much later, probably about 7th, 8th grade, when one of my science teachers asked us, do you really believe in what you think you believe in, or do you just go because your parents go? And I was like, well, oh, wait a minute. Oh, maybe I'm just doing this as a ritual. Maybe I'm just following the example that's been set before me. Maybe I'm just doing this because my parents said so. And it's so easy to fall into this ritualistic process that, you know, once a week we make it different. But that's not the point of Sabbath. The point of Sabbath is to have that special connection with God. And I'm here to tell you today that it's important for us to choose for ourselves, as Elijah told the people back then, who we serve. You know, it's one thing to, you know, hear the pastor say something, but it doesn't matter what the pastor says. It doesn't matter what your barber tells you about the Bible. It matters what you actually learn for yourself about the Bible. It's about choosing for yourself. And Elijah makes this message clear as day. He says, look, you guys just don't get it. God has shown you so many times that he's with you. He's shown you so many times how good he is, but you just keep forgetting. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to end this once and for all. He tells the prophets of Baal, look, you get a bull, I'll get a bull, we'll prepare it, and we'll do all these great things, and we'll see whose God is real once and for all. So the prophets of Baal, they spend all this time yelling and cutting themselves and doing all these things. And Elijah taunts them. He says, well, maybe he's just in the bathroom, and don't worry, he'll be back soon, and then he'll answer you. But finally, nothing happens. And in verse 30, Elijah says, okay, it's my turn. Verse 30 starts with this. Elijah said to all the people, come near to me. And all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. The first thing we need to notice here is that Elijah is calling the people back to unity. And in the same way he takes a stone that had been broken apart, he puts them back together to form one altar. He's telling the people, look, we need to get back together, get back on track for one solid purpose, the purpose of God. That's what we need to be doing here, not worshiping these false idols. Verse 32 continues, so with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench around the altar, large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. So he ranges the wood, he fills the pitchers, he does all this stuff. And it's clear that this bowl is not going to light itself on fire. It's covered in water, and he's given all glory to God. And finally, we get to verses 36 to 40, and this is the main emphasis of the message. There is something that authors used to do in the Old Testament. It's called a chiastic structure. And what it consists of is a pattern that goes back and forth. So in this case, it's verses 36 and 40, 37 and 39, and then 38 is the middle. And it leads up to this point in the middle. And verses 36 and 40 will reflect each other. Verses 37 and 39 reflect each other. And verse 38 falls as the keystone, the capstone to this whole passage. And these types of structures are found all throughout the Old Testament. Daniel 8, Joshua 1, Daniel 7, the entire book of Daniel in itself is actually a chiastic structure. They're cool to look for. But it lets us know that they really want you to focus on one point of what's happening here. And in this case, it's verse 38. We'll get there, but we're going to start with verse 36. At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that who? That you are God in Israel. And that I am what? Your servant. And I have done all these things at your word. You know, it's easy. It's so easy. I can attest to this, especially being up front. It's so easy to try and take credit for God's work. It is so easy. It's so easy for when people tell me at the back of the door, oh, that was a great sermon. I'll be like, yeah, I wrote that sermon. Yes, I did. Or they tell me, hey, you know that prayer you gave today? Oh, praise God for that prayer. Yeah, that's right. I made that prayer, right? It's so easy. But that's not the point. If we forget what we're doing and why we're doing it, as Hugh was saying this morning, why we're doing what we're doing, what's the point of being here? Galatians 1:10, Paul says, if we're not here to serve God, we are useless in God's sight. Do not forget who we are serving. And Elijah makes it clear as day that God is the one who's being praised here. God is the one in control. He's saying, look, God, let them know that it's you that's doing all these things, that it's you that's turning their heart back. I am merely your servant. Please let the people know this. Verse 37, answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their heart back again. And verse 38, the fire comes and consumes the burnt offerings and the stones and the dust and everything around. It licks up the water. There's nothing left. The people are amazed. The sign was given. Now, I don't know how often it happens to you, but sometimes I need to ask God for a sign too. As a theology major, come February, your senior year, we have what's called senior interviews. And this is what decides whether you get a job or not. This year, there were 8 of us in my class, and out of the 8 of us, 1 of us got a call. And it was not me, by any means. So, the rest of us, we sat there with our phones on our table, and any time it would say unknown number or a number that I didn't recognize, I would answer, I would put on my professional voice, yes, this is Isai Hernandez, how can I help you? Hi, you've won a free trip to Florida. Call now and you can redeem these points. Oh, okay, well, that's not it. Another unknown number, yes, hello. Hi, is your energy bill too high? We can help you with that. And every time I would answer that phone saying, God, please, 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 let it be Elder Gano, or let it be anyone, please, anyone from the conference. And I would pick up the phone, and once again, you want a free trip to Vegas, or we can help you with your car loans. Never, hey, is this Isai Hernandez? We got a job offer for you. 5 months I sat in my room. Well, 2 months at PUC, 3 months at home. I sat in my room with nothing, not a single phone call from any conferences, from any churches. Getting highly discouraged, I said, God, I spent 4 years at PUC for you. You called me for my junior year in academy to be a pastor for you. And now I've been sitting here 5 months and there's nothing for me. Was this a lie? Was it not truly a call? I mean, was I supposed to go work in the fields? So I started doing what anyone would do in my case. I started looking for alternate jobs because student loans are a thing and you have to pay them back at some point according to the government. And so, I applied to Big Five and Target and all these, small jobs just to get some kind of money going. And finally, I applied to PetSmart, that's the one, because I want a dog and my mom says no dogs in the house. So I figured, well, at least I can work with dogs all day if I work at PetSmart. But that morning I prayed, God, if you don't want me working at PetSmart or some remedial job, you got to make it clear to me right now, because I'm tired of looking for these jobs and just getting denied because I don't want to work Sabbath. So I went to PetSmart. I walked into the interview. Hey, how you doing? I'm Isai. And do you have experience with animals? Oh yeah, I have fish tanks growing up, and I've worked training dogs. Okay, cool. And then of course, we get to the last part. Any further comments? Yes, I just want you to know, by my religious beliefs, I will not work Friday sundown to Sabbath sundown. Oh, that's our busiest day of the work week. And I said, yes, I know, sir, but I will gladly work 24 hours a day for you any other day of the week. Just those 24 hours, I will not work. Okay, I'll get back to you on that. I got a couple other guys coming in, and I'll let you know soon. I never got a call from them. But as I left that place, I knew I wasn't going to be getting that job. It was plain from the look on his face that he didn't really care for a guy who can't work the busiest day of the week. So I was discouraged once again. I said, well, there goes another job interview. I'll go back to findajob.com and apply somewhere else. And I get home, and I look at my phone, and there's a new message waiting for me. And it says, hey, my name is Pastor Justin. I believe you worked with my dad back at PUC, and I understand you're looking for a job. And I kind of looked at it, and I said, it's a pastoral job. And I said, well, yeah, absolutely. I'm looking for a job. He said, okay, good. We need a Bible worker immediately. He said, and we want to offer you the position. And I said, oh, well, yes, absolutely. And so I went in for a job interview. They offered me the position on the spot. And I was like, okay, God, I'm sorry. You made it very clear to me very, very soon that this is what you have called me to. But it's easy. It's so easy to say, God, I need a sign. But when you ask for that sign, God is going to hand it to you and then some. He's going to say, look, here you go, and here's a little extra for you as well. Here's what I called you to. Don't ever forget it. The Israelites had their sign that God had never left them. The fire comes down and consumes everything, and the people are turned back. But something interesting I also found out while I was writing this paper. People have claimed that this was a false fire. I don't know if you ever heard these theories, but I found them intriguing. One of them says that Elijah used olive oil, and he simply filled the trench with olive oil, and that's how he lit it up. But the problem with that is olive oil has a different tint to it. And if you remember in verse 30, he called all the people near. They would have known that, he had used something different. Others say he used a giant mirror to reflect light onto it, and that's how he ignited it. But the mirrors of back then were usually bronze, and I don't know if you watch Mythbusters, but they tried lighting a boat on fire with a bronze mirror, and it just doesn't work. The third theory says he used something called naphtha, which is a fuel source. Nowadays, we use it in lighters every now and then, but it's very refined. It looks like oil. It's clean. It's pure looking, and you can see right through it. But the problem with that is, well, there's actually two. The first one being back then, they wouldn't have had a way to refine it, so it would have been crude oil, just black and sticky tar. It would have looked nothing like water. The second being, if you take a pool of this stuff and try to light it, it doesn't light properly. So once again, it doesn't work. And I read through all these theories of all these people saying, oh, Elijah was just, an illusionist of his day. But none of the theories hold true. And the thing about this is, when we do things in life for God, there's always going to be a naysayer. There's always going to be someone telling you, hey, I hear you go to church on Sabbath and you give money? Oh, yeah, I give 10% of my paycheck. Why would you do that? Do you know what you could do with that 10% of your paycheck? Can you imagine how much better your house could be? You could put it towards a new bathroom. You could put it towards a car payment. Think about what you could do with that 10%, and instead you're giving it to what? To this building where people get together and they eat some haystack things? What is that? No. Yeah, haystacks, they're weird to people. I realized that after going into the real world. People have no idea what a haystack is. Or people will tell you, why would you spend so much wasted time reading that book full of fantasy stories and you spend time praying and talking to this imaginary friend of yours? That's not what it's about. That's not what church is about. No matter where we go, what we do, someone's always going to be there to try and tell us what you're doing is a waste of time. What you're doing is a waste of money. You could be doing so much more. But when we know that God is with us, when we have the sign from Him that He is with us, that He has given the ultimate sacrifice for us, we know He's always with us. And we know that when we come here, we're giving to a righteous cause. We know that we are using our time wisely. That when we go out and do ministry, it is for a worthy cause. Verse 39, the people fall on their faces and they say, the Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. The people are turned around. Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 14, verses 23 and 24, that when we truly worship God in our churches, people will walk through the doors and fall flat on their face proclaiming that the Lord is God. Can you imagine what that would look like? Can you imagine someone walking through the back doors and saying, God is here today? Someone who's never walked in a church before saying, I don't know what it is, but there's something different about you guys. There's something different about the way you act, the way you do things. Something that I can explain is here today. I can only describe it as this extra spirit, as maybe a godlike figure. Elijah let us know back then that God was with us. And in verse 40, he takes all the prophets, he seizes them, and he gets rid of them. But in the same way that Elijah gave the sign to the Israelites, there was another sign that was given later in time. A sign when the people had once again turned their hearts from God. A sign when the people were doubting whether they would truly be saved, in the form of a baby. A baby who would grow up as a regular man, as a carpenter of all things, the lowliest position. He would grow up and gain followers, and one day he would give the ultimate sign and pay the ultimate price, and he would give his life for the people to save them. He would give his own life so that someday you could spend some time with him. He gave his own life so that you would know that he loves you too. Today we're going to have an opportunity to remember this sign. We're going to have an opportunity to remember his body that was broken for us on the cross. We're going to have an opportunity to remember the blood that was spilled from that crown of thorns, from the nails that were dug into his flesh. It's easy to forget sometimes what we're doing. It's easy to become ritualistic. It's easy to simply eat the bread and drink the juice. But today is my challenge that as we go through this communion service, we not forget why we're doing what we're doing. That when we tell people as we leave this place, today I had communion, we ate some bread, we drank some juice. No, today I partook in the remembrance of what Jesus did for me on the cross. At this time, we're going to break for the foot wash I'm going to have over in the fellowship hall. And during that time, the children's story will be in here. And after that, we will reconvene back in the sanctuary for the breaking of the bread and the drinking of the juice. May God bless us today. I am too.